live demo of how to do screen resolution in Linux. So the organizers are very stressed, so I'll help them out. There is a talk scheduled at 2, which is mine. There are also some workshops. Thank you for not attending those workshops and coming and sitting here. So, okay, now this is a problem because now I have to see that. I am Akshay. I am like Priyanshu, who is going to speak tomorrow, a generalist, which means I do a lot of things and it's very difficult to introduce me with a few words which will make me feel like I didn't tell something that I should have told about. Of course, that sounds like I'm boasting, but basically I've been into free software development ever since I started software development. I contribute to Swatantra Malayalam Computing and Indic project, and then I've been a long time contributor for Mozilla, which I gave up when Mozilla was doing random things, and then Debian. Also now we have experiments like Prav, the stall which you would have visited. I'm part of those, mentoring GSOC contributors, outreachy contributors. That's what I do mostly with software. So this talk is titled Why I Can't Say I Will Only Use Libre free CT scanner and other issues bigger than software. If you know 4 freedoms and what they are, please raise your hands. Can you try guessing what they are?
I just know what FOSS stands for, like make the code openly available to the public. That's what it's
Okay.
FOSS.
Okay, but you have not heard of 4 freedoms. Have you heard that?
No, I don't think so.
No, you haven't. Perhaps then this is a useful time to talk about the basics of free software. So in FOSS, the free stands for, I think earlier someone was asking a question about how GPUs are very expensive and therefore it's contradicting free and open source. That's actually not relevant at all, because the free in free software actually stands for freedom, like free speech. It's not about the cost. So that's where the word libre and gratis come from. Gratis is something which you don't have to pay for. Libre is something which stands for freedom. It's like you do not have a restriction in dealing with that particular thing, like free speech. You can stand here and tell things. You can hold posters and so on. I'm not supposed to talk about things that happen here. So 4 freedoms are these: the freedom to run software, the freedom to inspect and modify software, the freedom to redistribute copies of software. So you got something, you can give it to someone else without worrying about, is this going to violate someone's copyright? Is there anyone who is going to ask me why I distributed all of that? And then also the freedom to distribute copies of your modified versions. So if you go to Free Software Movement's homepage, which is usually the gnu.org, you see an essay where they talk about what is free software and what are the freedoms that are necessary for a software to be free. So why do we need this freedom is the question that should all come automatically. Now if you do not know about what free software is, it's hard. So if anyone who has raised hand for you already knowing what free software is, can you say why we need free software? Why is freedom important? Why is software freedom important? Of course, nobody's going to raise hand.
Knowledge commons.
Knowledge commons.
If we are taking software as an evolution of...
So if you are thinking of software as an evolution of a collective knowledge, then it becomes important for software also to be seen as commons instead of exclusive money-making machines controlled by other people. So that is one perspective. And the other perspective is if software is going to influence all kinds of technologies in our life, having softwares as free software, as a commons, helps us have a say in how the technology influences our life. So these are the two things I feel why we should have free software.
Nice. So, yeah, I think I'll also show what in the same GNU essay they say right under the paragraph of why free software, why we need these freedoms. They say that software should respect users' freedom and community. That free software is a matter of liberty. Think of free as in free speech, like I said. And two things like, I didn't get your name. Kamal, like Kamal said, it's about the community, one, it's about the commons. And then the user gets to control the software rather than the software controlling the user. So if something is free software, we have the freedom to control it. We have the freedom to make it work to our needs rather than make it work to what someone else thinks that I should be using it for. So that's the freedom aspect which they stress on in that particular essay. Of course, a lot of us see free software in a lot of different ways, and that's also led to a lot of confusion. I've been a person who went from a very fanboy kind of perspective of free software to an anti, no, free software is not so good. All of those different curves I've gone through. So what I've seen in those journey is that a lot of people think very many different things about free software. Like we just discussed, some people think the source code is open and that's free. Some people think it allows anyone to build their own companies without spending a lot of money, because you can just download a bunch of libraries and software and use it in your software. So the idea that a software should not have power over human beings, that human beings should have power over software and dictate or decide what to do, what the software should do, is, I believe, at least in this essay, the core of what free software is about. So then naturally there is a question about what is open source. For a lot of people they are the same, because they probably only heard about open source and they have not considered what freedom stands for. So if you ask ChatGPT with the right prompts, they will tell, ChatGPT will tell that open source is for people who want to make money. They praise the idea that the source code is open and all of that, but in their hearts, all that they care about is profit. And when they share code, it's their selfishness that they're actually sharing. So how does this apply to, let's say, college life? It like comes up like this. People will be like, is contributing to open source useful for my career? Should I contribute? Where should I do? What should I do? So then there will be a senior person who will be like, yeah, you should apply for GSOC this month. Next month you should apply for Outreachy, and after that you go internship. So the whole career path is fixed. Now this, if you are in the free software space, you've probably seen many videos about how there's a lot of spam PRs, October 1st and things like that. So all of that come from this idea that, okay, we need to contribute to open source for our own needs. So we don't care about what is happening there, what is the whole philosophy of the whole thing. Which is why I started with the idea of what free software is. So, and then there is the other side. If you know who this is, please raise your hand. Do not shout the answer. Some people do look like St. Ignatius here. Okay, now one of you can answer. Okay, or wait, don't answer. This is St. Ignatius. Now, among those who didn't raise your hands, if you know this person, you can raise your hand. Among those who didn't earlier, you didn't know. Now you know. Anyone from the back? Who is that? Who is that? Yeah, you can answer. Richard Stallman. So this is Richard Stallman's, he himself happily takes on this name. There is a web page, stallman.org/saint, where he's describing how this is a religion, and you just have to say, there is no system but GNU, and Linux is one of its kernels. If you say that, you become a member of the Church of Emacs, and then you have to use Emacs, and there's a lot of stuff like that. So that's trivia. Now there is a lot of people who model themselves after Stallman. They're like, we'll only use free software. That everything else is evil, everything else is morally incorrect, everything else is bad. Like if you use Windows, if I see you using Windows, if I see you using something that's proprietary, you're cancelled. I don't like you. So those kinds of people, I mean, I was one of those people, so I know exactly how they are. That ends up with symptoms like this, where people are like, is it possible to be successful? I don't know what successful is, with only using free and open source software, and then attempting to use free and open source software. Are you running only free software? So all those kinds of things come up. So essentially there is this equation of, if something is proprietary, it is bad, it's malware, it's wrong. Now I'm not saying that is wrong, so please listen to the whole talk before starting to take your pitchfork at me. So this is how Stallman, for example, uses internet. This is from his homepage. He doesn't connect directly to, this might have changed, it's not updated, but I think knowing that person, he sends a command, and then in some other computer it downloads it, and then someone prints it out for him, or in many cases he makes someone else do it. So Stallman has traveled across continents, so he's definitely used flights, and I suspect that flights are booked using free software. So someone else must have been booking or using proprietary software for Stallman. So someone like Stallman, or among us, many of us, if we have the privilege to make other people do things with proprietary software, we'll be able to use only free software. Otherwise, it's very difficult to live a life with only free software. And I do have a liberated computer ThinkPad, which doesn't have an HDMI, otherwise I would have kept it here. So I've also tried to live that life of completely free software, including the BIOS, everything being free software. So this is what in psychology is called black and white thinking, all or none thinking. So there are so many different words for it. All or nothing, thinking in extremes, black and white, binary. So we all work with computers, so mostly binary probably is embedded in our neural network. So we come to CT scanner, the point of the talk. So CT scanner, how does this whole thing come into the picture? So what is an opposite of binary thinking? What is a possible better philosophy? I'm making an assumption and a hypothesis and an assertion here, and you're of course welcome to debate it, but please think for yourself whether you agree with many of my statements or not. So CT scanner is where I find the opposite, the starting point. Why do I bring up CT scanner? Because apart from being a software engineer, I am a doctor, and I've spent at least 2 years of my life in a rural tribal hospital where I was handling the emergency department, and we didn't have a CT scanner, and a lot of people with head injury, we had to refer to the nearest hospital. But earlier, prior to that, I used to work in a government medical hospital where there was a CT scanner, and I used to check the CT reports in a software. And this was also the time when I used to be like a free software advocate. So the computer in the emergency room was not Linux, GNU Linux or Linux, or it was Windows. It had a proprietary operating system, it had a proprietary software, and then I was under the constant dilemma of what am I doing, is this correct? Emergency medicine, this is how a typical emergency room might look like, and perhaps this software, this computer might be running non-free software. And mind you, this is not the only computer in that room. There are computers in these kind of monitors. There are computers in, I'm not sure what other equipments are there. This clock, I don't know. Many of the things these days are electronic IT. Is it 2:30 now? 1 second. This clock, just have to. 2:30, correct. So this clock is correct. So this is what CT scanner looks like. It's usually not in the emergency room. It's in a separate room, air conditioned and all that. So this, to operate this machine also you need software, and then the images, to view the images you need software. I don't exactly know how to operate this machine, I only read the images from that. So this is how a CT scan printout might look like. These are basically slices of the brain. It's like X-ray at different levels. And why is it useful? You know this guy? Jiggy Vasudev? Yeah, correct. He apparently yesterday, or I mean a few days back, had a injury like that. So when you do a CT scan, you see a asymmetric kind of pattern, and then you know, okay, there is some blood there. Or this is usually blood, it could be something else also, some fluid, some change in the density, and depending on if it's too grossly shifting, so this is called the midline. So if there's too much blood here, this whole thing will be shifted this side, which means it's very dangerous and you would need surgery like that and things like that. And then there's a lot more other things you can detect using a CT scanner. So it's very useful, especially in emergencies. And then these days, it's just mathematics. So if you have enough slices, thin slices, then you can reconstruct a 3D image, something like this, and then you can use whatever Godot, or you missed that workshop, or Unity or whatever, to render an image like this, and then you can play around with it. That's what I used to do when I was bored. So if you search for CT scanner software, you get around 11,300 results. But if you search for forced CT scanner or free CT scanner, you will actually say no results found. Do you want to search without code? So, and this is a very bad methodology. You should have pointed out that by now, because that exact keyword might not be there in the literature. But this one says 11,300. So at least nobody wrote this. So if you really go into the depths of this particular example, although this example is not the point I'm trying to make, but nevertheless, if you go into the example, the images come out in a standard called DICOM. DICOM is like PNG, but much more complicated than PNG, because it has a depth and all of that, which level of the slice is this and all of that. So this DICOM standard is actually kind of open standard. I mean, you have to pay them, I think, but basically there are libraries which are built over DICOM standard. So there is something called VSys, which is a free Libre DICOM viewer, and it brings out reasonably good looking, at least for the image, good looking images and things like that. But that's only the viewer. I mean, you cannot operate the CT machine with this VSys software. I have never seen this software. I just searched and found Philips or someone. This is how the one which operates the machine looks like. So you have all the settings for how to turn the patient and where you're taking the photos and where you're taking the X-rays and all of that. So there is no free software alternative yet. If someone is like, I will only use free software, then they will be thinking, oh, I have to, if I get into an accident, I will never go to a modern medicine hospital because they don't use free software. I'll go to I'll not go into that debate now. So basically the point is, I sometimes don't care about free software because there are issues bigger than software, is my assertion. So if we think in black and white, we will get stuck in one dimension, and that dimension could be free software, not free software. Malware, great holy software. So That's what happens if you get stuck in one-dimensional thinking. So that's unidimensional thinking, tunnel vision, whatever you want to call it. You look at only one thing, and then you make your entire life about that one thing. Some people say that's a recipe to success, but I'm going to say we need the opposite. We need something called intersectionality. We need to think about many things. We need to think about the intersections of a lot of problems and not just be stuck in a binary world. So, for example, you have 4 freedoms. Now, let us say within 4 freedoms, do you have the freedom to not run the software? If you look at the criteria, there is freedom to run the program as you wish for any purpose, but it doesn't explicitly say you should have the freedom to not run the software. So what does that mean? They say a non-free program controls the user and the developer controls the program. This makes the program an instrument of unjust power. So if you have a software which is mandated on, let's say, a government hospital, and the staff there is like mandated to use a particular software to punch in their biometrics. Or let's say the country of India, and they're like, if you want ration, you need to give your biometrics into this particular software, which then collects all the data in a web 360 degree. Okay, that didn't come. They're profiling your data, they're profiling what you're purchasing, how much you're purchasing, a 360 degree view of your activities they're creating. So there's a software like this. It's licensed AGPL. Okay, the whole stack is licensed AGPL, let's imagine. But you have to use the one they are using. So does that still fit the definition of free, or is it not free now? So something that is AGPL licensed, but if you do not have the freedom to modify it and run your own version, then this freedom is useless. I mean, this freedom doesn't work out, right? So it's not about the license alone. It's about whether you can practically get your freedoms implemented. Even though it might be in the license that you can modify it, if you are not able to not use the software, or if you're not able to modify and run your own version, it doesn't really work out. So that is what is actually happening with any internet connected software these days. So Anganwadi workers, for example, they're fighting against unusable tech that doesn't work in Android 4.4, they have Android 4.2 tablet, or software, internet, there's no internet issues, or screen resolution, all kinds of bugs. It crashes when there's no internet, it crashes when there's low speed. So you can read this article. It's just one group of workers who are suffering because of that particular freedom. The software might be fully free and open source. In this case, it's not, but I'm just hypothetically, even if this was fully free and open source, this problem continues unless you care and fix it, right? So same thing happened. This guy, richest person on earth, said Twitter will open source all code used to recommend tweets on March 31st. So this is how open source works, right? They use this buzzword of open to wash a lot of things. But nevertheless, even if it was completely open, of course it would increase transparency, but the code would still be running on Twitter. Like, we can't change and control it, right? We can't run a parallel Twitter. So when it comes to internet software, free software really have a gap. And this is not my finding. People have been talking about it for a long time, including Stallman himself, who said on the internet, proprietary software isn't the only way to lose your computing freedom. Service as a software substitute, or SaaS, SaaS, he didn't want to use SaaS. SaaS is another way to give someone the power over your computing. So even Stallman recognized there's a problem, and there are many others, Bruce Perens, Bradley Kuhn, a lot of people who say that with the internet it breaks. So Stallman's solution was, don't use SaaS, like don't use internet software, so then your freedom will be protected. So if you don't use this, you're done. Which is probably why he uses links and all to download the web pages and things like that. Another example is this, of course. If you want to see a full screen version of it, you can go to the Brav stall. But this is basically a document prepared by the free software community comparing different instant messengers. You have WhatsApp, you have Telegram, which is free software on the client, but the server is not free. And then you have Signal. Both server and client is free software, but even there, it's a centralized service that's being run. So if you want to, modify feature in Signal, you can't really. You have to run a parallel Signal universe, which doesn't meaningfully translate to freedom. So you need other services like Element or XMPP based Dino or Quixi or Prav, or you need a completely distributed app like Tox and Jammy. But even there, I think freedom, if you run a different version, there will be problems. But nonetheless, this is another example of the point that even if something is fully free software, it doesn't realize all your freedoms. There are still problems other than that. So Signal is that example. So basically, free software has no answer to web-based software. That's the first time I kind of realized free software is not enough. But don't try to be like Shalman and say, okay, don't use web-based software and try to find answers only within free software. Think about what other dimensions we can add to this graph. If there is a morally better software, a moral imperative to use freedom respecting software, what other dimensions can we add? Can we add with intersectionality? Let's say another dimension, okay, decentralized and free. So it's both freedom respecting and also decentralized, therefore different people can set up and meaningfully realize their freedoms. Now, those are not just two, you can have many more dimensions, right? You can have protecting human agency, localized to vernacular languages, accessible to people with various disabilities. Someone who is blind, can they use it? And very simply, something that works versus something that doesn't. So, there are software which they say it's a free software alternative of some popular proprietary software, but it is just a README file. So if it's just a README file, it doesn't work. So if you have all these dimensions, so what is the moral compass that we can use is a question that should naturally arise. What I'm saying is forget software freedom completely. Like software freedom is already solved. You have products like this, everyone can write software, we can, all kinds of software freedom, in software, we can with products like this. Don't get into the streetlight effect. So this is streetlight effect. The police person is asking the other guy, is this where you lost your wallet? And they say, no, I lost it in the park, but this is where the light is. So we have software and code and GPUs, so we will try to solve all the problems with that. That is called streetlight effect. Don't fall prey for that. Instead, choose harder problems. Choose problems which require us to do more, to work with more people, to think bigger, think more complex, solve bigger issues. So if you look at the why for four freedoms, you see that instrument of unjust power. It's not just software that's instrument of unjust power, right? A lot of things are unjust power. Representative image. One example is this, economic inequality. This just came last week. I would have used another one from a year ago if this hadn't come. But people have been telling this. The rich in India are too rich now. The inequality is so high. The poor are so poor and the rich are so rich. And this is not like only Ambani, okay? Don't go by Ambani's wedding and say only Ambani is rich. It's all of us. So if you have 25,000 monthly income, you are in the top 10% Indians. And if you have more than 1 lakh monthly income, you are among top 3%. So all of you, if you are in NIT Calicut or you are at least present here today, you will likely be making more than 1 lakh very soon, if not already. And that would put you somewhere here, like in the top 1%. And then, like 25,000 is 90%, which means here. So imagine all of these people, okay? Last time I came here, I was asking about poverty line. If you look at poverty line, it's an unlivable amount. That's the kind of inequality that is there. And of course, a lot of us call ourselves middle class without a sense of how much in the upper class we are. So what we need is Ubuntu. Not this Ubuntu, not this Ubuntu. This Ubuntu. So the Nguni people, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, they're saying I am what I am because of who we all are. So if we have this Ubuntu in our mind, we'll be thinking about others. We'll be operating on the principle that of commons, of everyone deserving a dignified human life. And let's think about what we can do together. If you want to go fast, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go together. Why did I put a question mark there? Yeah. People are talking over the lunch break. Bangalore has no water. These are bigger issues, right? Like, solve that with free software. Of course, there are a lot of things you can do with software, but the thinking has to start from the problems. There's climate change, which is why all of this is happening. The temperatures, the charts, if you're looking at it. And it's not just huge problems, there are also intermediate level big problems. Like, how do we teach technology? This is just a very nice open access book. You go to teachtogether.tech. It gives you tips on how to teach technology. So a lot of people, over lunch someone was telling, there's a lack of competence. NIT Calicut you can find a lot of competent people. But then when you go to a next tier of college, suddenly people are just writing code in their notebooks or still using Turbo, C++ and things like that. So how do we bridge this gap? There's a lot of teaching required. There's a lot of capacity building required. Just a problem I am working on personally. There are books like this. There are huge libraries all around us in many places. How do we get this information, knowledge out of these books into forms where people can access it? Like, if there's a library in Delhi, I can't travel from here to Delhi and then read a book there, if that's a rare book. So books are all lost in spaces. So how do we make it accessible? Now, I know how to solve this. If you want to know, you ask me. Then there are problems like kids don't know mathematics, biodiversity loss, the number of species is completely getting lost. There's a huge problem of hunger. And if you need more and more well-researched problem profiles, there are websites like 8,000 Hours which talk about the biggest problems that we're going to have, nuclear war, pandemics, things like that. Even AI, like if you are worried about AI, or interested in AI a lot, the risks of AI, how to protect ourselves from that. So, yeah. So, yeah, so the point of the talk is that we don't get lost in these kind of debates. Yeah, you know what this is? Yeah, if we get lost in these kind of debates, there's a lot of things we can do if we are doing it. Yeah. Any disagreements?
When you think in that way, since it's a failure to law, there is no point in anything, right?
Correct.
And technically speaking,
Nothing matters in you.
yeah,
Correct.
that's right. Technically speaking, if it is like we are far from Earth, and this is Saturn, the ring is Saturn, and that won't have that much gravitational influence on Earth. Simply.
Gravitational
Influence. So like what here important is way more immense.
Okay, yeah, because we are so far from Earth, that is a bigger problem. Correct. That's a very nice perspective. So in this particular framing, this is a bigger problem because we are far away. So if we put ourselves in a different frame, like if you're living in a village, or you're living in a place where there's a lot of climate disasters, then your framing changes. So if you are living in Bangalore, till last year, climate change was not a problem, but from this year onwards, climate change is a big problem. Every tech company is going to start building on climate related things. So if framing is really important, maybe let's put ourselves in rural villages or places where there are actual problems, rather than just be in Calicut or in Kochi or in Bangalore. Perhaps different kind of solutions will come up.
So how do we approach? So you talked about problems. You didn't say how do we approach the problem. So you talked about many dimensions. So you didn't give any thought on how to approach such problems and which dimensions which are very good, like which dimensions we should choose, like the probability of choosing such dimensions.
I think one thing is we shouldn't think of any one dimension as too important. I like this picture and the concept of intersectionality, which I got from intersectional feminism. If we think about one dimension as being too important, we then fall into the same free software trap. Then we are like, okay, everything should be free software, and then we ignore all the other dimensions. We can probably have expertise in a few dimensions. It's difficult to have expertise in all dimensions, although as a generalist I like to believe that it is possible. Maybe it's not possible, we can be honest about that. So we develop expertise in multiple dimensions as much as possible, and at least be aware of these intersecting dimensions, that there are these other issues, and it's an open list. We should keep adding to that list, and then think about those also. So at least build solidarity, work with people. So last year, when did I get? So there was a Wikidata meetup or OSM Kerala meetup in Kerala, Thrissur, and then Nalin and Satyan Mash came, and they talked about the importance of accessibility in OpenStreetMap. So till that point, that was not in my mind at all. Now over the last 2-3 months, I've been working with the team and mentoring GSOC candidates to work on accessibility as an issue. So the more we are open to collaborations with diverse group of people, if you are all the same kind of people, we will not get into different dimensions. But the moment we open ourselves to diverse group of people, we open ourselves to new learnings, and there, because the learning is lower there, you have not reached saturation, you can learn a lot very fast. Like if you are using internet and learning things, you can learn a lot very fast, and it becomes kind of fun after a point to do these intersections and generalism.
Simply like, so do we need to solve the problem, just solve the problem, or we have to use free software to solve the problem? So which one? Like,
I mean,
so
it's up to you.
Like we have an easy solution using proprietary software, and maybe we have to dig much hard if we use free software. So
no, I mean, if you are in an emergency room and then there's a CT machine, if there is a free software that operates it and it's working, I would use that. But I wouldn't spend my time thinking about, okay, let's crowdsource a solution where a CT scanner has a free and open source software running it. So that's what intersectionality is. No, it cannot be. There cannot be a general answer for that particular situation in that particular context. With all the options that are available to us, we'll have to be pragmatic and realist. Realist is where we are looking at the world with its full complexity, and then choose a solution which, according to our very intersectional brain, this machine that does a lot of modeling, it chooses a solution. It will mostly be right. Granted, this brain is working in this mode and not in this mode. If it's working in this mode, it will be biased by that dimension. But if it's working in this mode, it will come up with the best solution.
see, like this, you can ask anything to him. He is only the doctor who does free software available here. Please.
Yeah, I think please don't take the request to audiences. Please don't take the next line in a wrong way. But I think it has been disservice to have this talk while others are in workshops, because this is one point that I felt that 2 points have been missing out in free software movement, and it's very I'm very happy to see that being presented here. One is that free software alone is not enough to fix all the problems in technology. That's why we need to go to a larger thing like consensual technologies. Like it can be, if my liberty need not be protected only by free software. The same issues that you pointed out, like with SaaS and other thing. Google is using a 90% free software stack, but we are still getting exploited left and right. So that is there. And then for all the people who have spent a lot of years in free software movement trying to, getting Linux or FOSS into every other thing, free software is not the only thing in the world which requires your attention. So as you rightly put, poverty, hunger, or just some random person trying to cross the road or some persistent issue, that is a thing, and it is very nice that you have pointed it out. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. We have the unique opportunity to do whatever we want till the next speaker joins online.
Did you hear about a team in NITC? NITC is nearby to NIT. There is a team under Dr. Jairaj Yukadav who developed an indigenous ultrasound scanner, and it is now being rolled out to all the PHCs, FSCs of the nation. So, can we talk to them and make it open source, open hardware? Is it possible, or do you have any insight in that?
I don't have. I'm not sure if anyone else has, but basically, yeah, I would be extremely happy to hear about those kinds of solutions, because in many rural places, many hospitals, the ultrasound itself, I think that's why they developed it. It's a huge barrier. It's a very easy device. Like the moment you put it in your stomach, or you can mostly use it for stomach, you can see the fluid. So if there's a damage, you can see it. So it's a very useful device. But the problem is it's very expensive, and indigenous models are not available, and there are also legal problems related to sex detection of fetus and all of that. And so on a problem basis, those kinds of solutions are super good, but we will have to talk about how to get it open source and open hardware, open design. Yeah,
We can talk.
yes, we should. I mean, please do not take my thing that I'm against open source CT scanner software. I mean, we need free software in that also, but
see, even if we start working on open source CT scanners or something like this, the level of efficiency that we have achieved with proprietary CT scanners, it will still take time to go up till there, right?
that's true for all software, right? OpenAI, why did they build Devika?
Yeah, but then what I'm saying is, do you think it will be right to, like, let's say we introduce it for a group of people and we test them using open source CT scanners. So are we doing justice to them by denying or not giving them the facility of where we are not giving them the proprietary software, because definitely that's more efficient.
Yeah.
So how do we start getting it working with, because then that is the denial of service in sense.
Correct. So I will first address the idea that proprietary software is necessarily more efficient. Perhaps is not right. There are like, at least in citation management, this is software Zotero, which I believe is much better than Mendeley, and there are so many other examples. So sometimes free software with the community is much better than the proprietary alternatives. And when it comes to problems like this, it's mostly gonna be, if it's an indigenous product with not much investment and all that, it's free software which will unlock the features in that case. So in an intersectional kind of perspective, some products require a lot of capital and you might need proprietary. So it's a strategy question basically. Yeah.
Also there is a difference. There are very little much companies who are doing such heavy costly instruments. I work with one instrument for field emission and field emission scanning electron microscope. It costs 2 crores. For its annual maintenance, it costs 10 to 12 lakhs. The thing is, like, there are not much companies building it, and so it depends on how much fund you can provide. Then you buy it. That means, like, if you can buy courses, some that costs almost 2 crore plus. Also, same thing you can buy from Shimadzu. It's from Japan. It is not that much costly. But the thing is, like, we can't say that this one is efficient or not, because the service they provide, even they are working on based on same technology, it's not exactly ditto. So there's a different, the service is different. So we can't compare like that.
But the ethical issue I agree with, like we can't experiment on, and this is what a lot of tech people, you need the HTML, okay. A lot of tech people forget that altogether, in health especially. These devices that you use in health, they have to undergo rigorous testing, clinical trials, you need a lot of evidence, safety controls and all of that. But when it comes to software, no, nothing. You upload it to Play Store, end of story. So, I mean, this is not my slide. That tech exceptionalism, that software can be deployed without any testing is completely wrong. We need to be very critical about is software healthy, what are the side effects and all of that. But at the same time, we also need to see the agency of people. Like there are people who are doing do-it-yourself pancreas. So people with type 1 diabetes where their pancreas has completely stopped working. They are like, okay, let's come together and build our own pancreas hackable do-it-yourself thing from scratch, and they're sharing the designs like this ultrasound scanner if it's open hardware. They're sharing the designs, they're making it possible for themselves. So self-experimentation, there's no ethical issues, right? We can experiment whatever. So that is the possibility of free software. Suddenly, if with CT it might be difficult, but at least ultrasound or things where everyone uses it, if it's free software, suddenly a lot of us can experiment on ourselves and we can all come together and build it. Whereas if a company had to build it, they would have to go through a lot of trials and things like that. So yeah, so I think it's important to open our minds to the possibilities of all sides and be focused on the problem very specifically. Yes, I'll give one more talk now. The speaker is not there.
Hey Akshay, so great talk, great insights.
Thank you.
The approach, it makes sense, like to be pragmatic rather than be limited by a binary approach. But
Be intersectional.
yeah, but what I was wondering was, won't this kind of approach inadvertently could even discourage the approach of free software? So for example, let's say I got an opportunity to work in an IoT company. So let's say I used to do free software a lot. I joined there, and there it's all proprietary. So my manager is coming and saying, it's very hard to do free software, like everything, this is much easier, much convenient. Otherwise you have to spend a lot of money, you have to spend a lot of effort.
Correct.
So let's say even though I am very much interested in trying to develop a solution, this kind of thinking would come, right? This would be much harder. So why don't I just be pragmatic and just go with what we have right now? So then it becomes like a kind of like depends on the individual, which I think makes it much harder, right? In the case of if we follow the other core free software principle, then it's all about we know free software is the right thing to do, so we have to do. But now it becomes like we have to decide when do we cross the line. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Correct. I mean, I've been also in this dilemma. Okay, the next speaker is here. Just 1 minute. So the dilemma is real. We will always be questioning ourselves, is pragmatism, if we adopt pragmatism, then who will hold us accountable? That's basically the question you're asking. And can we trust ourselves? Where do we draw the line? My belief is that if you followed this whole slide and you agreed with the logic towards the harder problems, choose hard problems. Not because they are hard problems, but because you are fighting powers, unjust powers. You are fighting against certain things to achieve equality in the society, to achieve better sustainability, to be together. So those are your guidelines. So if you restrict it to the open source, what is more profitable, that dilemma, then of course it is better to embrace free software as a moral code, because if that is the only question that is at play there. But if it's a larger problem and only there, like it's a health problem, or I'm not sure what the IoT device is solving. If the IoT device is solving a minute problem and that is where you're having this dilemma, then you're just being the open source kind of pragmatism mode.
Understood.
I'm not talking about the open source pragmatism, I'm talking about the free software level pragmatism, the save the world kind of pragmatism.
Got it. So now I guess it depends on the dimensions that we choose as our guiding lights.
Correct.
Based on that we decide.
Correct.
Cool.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.